I'm Mr. Dano. Today, we are going to be learning about how the nervous system controls and responds to body functions and directs behavior. But if you watched your video, you would have already known this. So, the nervous system contains two main parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is made up of nerve fibers that branch off the spinal cord and extend to all parts of the body. The sympathetic nervous system sends out impulses to glands and smooth muscles and tells the adrenal medulla to release epinephrine and norepinephrine into the blood system. These stress hormones cause several changes in the body, including an increase in heart rate and blood pressure. The sympathetic nervous system originates in the spinal cord, and its main function is to activate the psychological changes that occur during the fight or flight response. This component of the autonomic nervous system utilizes and activates the release of norepinephrine in the reaction.
Here's an example of the fight or flight situation. In these types of situations, your sympathetic nervous system is called into action. It uses energy to increase your blood pressure, your heart beats faster, and digestion slows down.
The parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, helps produce a state of equilibrium in the body. Both are part of the greater autonomic nervous system, responsible for involuntary and reflexive functions in the body.
Now it is time for the parasympathetic nervous system to work to save energy. This calls for the rest and digest responses. This is when blood pressure can decrease, pulse rate can slow, and digestion can start.
Here we have some other Patriot player that is representing the central nervous system. Here is his brain, and this is his spinal cord. These are the two main components of the central nervous system. So pictured here, we have the cervical labeled at the top. That controls the neck muscles, the diaphragm, wrists, triceps, and fingers on your body. Then, right down below, we have the thoracic, which controls the hand intercostals, the abdominals. Down below that, we have the lumbar, that controls the hips, the quadriceps, hamstrings, knee, and the foot.
Hi, I'm Mr. Dano, and I'm going to teach you about the anatomy of the brain. If you don't learn this, I will hit you with this, and it will hurt very badly. So here we have the frontal lobe, which controls personality, behavior, emotions, judgment, planning, problem solving. It also contains Broca's area and has the motor strip, which helps with body movement and has to do with intelligence. Back here we have the occipital lobe, which interprets vision. Then up here we have the parietal lobe, which interprets language, like words, and senses touch, pain, and temperature, and interprets signals from vision, hearing, motor, sensory, and memory. And it has to do with spatial and visual perception. And down here we have the temporal lobe, which has to do with understanding language, which is Wernicke's area, memory, hearing, sequencing, and organization.
What does a brain do when it sees its friend across the street? It gives a brain wave.
The brain is an amazing 3-pound organ that controls all functions of the body. The body interprets information from the outside world and embodies the essence of the mind and soul. Intelligence, creativity, emotion, and memory are a few of the many things governed by the brain. Protected within the skull, the brain is composed of the cerebellum, cerebrum, and brainstem. The brainstem, which is somewhere back here, acts as a relay center connecting the cerebrum and cerebellum to the spinal cord. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain and is composed of right and left hemispheres. It performs higher functions like interpreting touch, vision, and hearing, as well as speech, reasoning, emotions, learning, and fine control of movement. Okay, so here in the left frontal lobe lies Broca's area. If this is damaged, you may have difficulty moving your tongue or with facial muscles to produce the sounds of speech. And Wernicke's area lies in the left temporal lobe, which causes Wernicke's aphasia if it's damaged. Wernicke's aphasia may cause you to speak long sentences that have no meaning and to have trouble interpreting other speech. Dude.
This is a cross-section of the brain where one can see all the internal brain structures. Here is the brainstem. The brainstem is the oldest part of the brain, and it begins where the spinal cord swells and enters the skull. It is responsible for all auto-survival functions. The medulla, which is here, is the base of the brainstem. It controls heartbeat and breathing. The thalamus, which is located there, is a sensory switchboard located at the top of the brainstem. It directs messages to sensory areas in the cortex and transmits the replies to the cerebellum and medulla. The reticular formation, which is located in here, is a nerve network in the brainstem that is important in controlling arousal. The pons, which is here, is a part of the reticular formation that controls relaxation. The cerebellum, also known as the little brain, is attached to the rear of the brainstem. It coordinates voluntary movements and balance. The limbic system, which is in here, is a system of neural structures at the border of the brainstem and cerebrum. It is associated with emotions like fear and aggression and drives for food and sex. The amygdala, which is located down here, are two lima bean-sized neural clusters linked to emotions of fear and anger. The hypothalamus, which is down here, is below the thalamus, and it is responsible for homeostasis in the body, and it governs the endocrine system via the pituitary gland. The hippocampus, which would be in here, is a seahorse-shaped paired structure responsible for memory, and it assists in storage and recall in long-term memory. The reward center is a circuit that, under normal conditions, controls an individual's responses to natural rewards like food, sex, and social interactions. It is an important determinant of motivation and incentive drive. It is located in the hypothalamus. The cerebral cortex, which is all of this, is the intricate fabric of interconnected neural cells that covers the cerebral hemispheres. It is the body's ultimate control and information processing center. Each hemisphere is separated into 4 lobes. The different lobes are the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe. The motor cortex controls voluntary movements, and it is located on the rear of the frontal lobe. The sensory cortex is on the front of the parietal lobe, and it receives information from the skin surface and sense organs.
Okay guys, so we're going to move on and we're going to talk about the technological aspects of neuroscience. This here you see in front of you is the result of an EEG reading. EEGs are used to show electrical impulses and brain activity under certain psychological states. So like you'll be able to see alertness and drowsiness through the reading of EEGs. And an MRI machine, or a magnetic resonance imaging, is a little bit different than an EEG in the way that it produces detailed pictures of the inside of a person's body. So it basically outlines our physiological process by using a strong magnetic field, radio waves, and field gradients. Now, the fMRI is not to be confused with the actual MRI. It does use MRI technology, but it's more of a functional neuroimaging procedure, which measures brain activity by detecting changes associated with blood flow. And a CT scan uses a series of X-ray images taken at different angles, then composes the sections, which then creates the cross-sectional images of the slices that were taken. And finally, the PET scan. The PET scan uses a specific dye that has radioactive traces, and it's basically injected into the veins. It's used to measure blood flow, oxygen use, and glucose metabolism.
So this is a diagram of a neuron, which is a specialized cell in the brain. Here is the cell body of the neuron. It contains the nucleus, which holds all the DNA for the neuron, and it also contains the mitochondria, ribosomes, and granules and all the other organelles that can be found in any cell body. At the edges of the cell body are the dendrites. The dendrites are branching off pieces of the cell body that can connect to the axon endings of the other neurons that surround it. Axon endings are the buttons at the end of the axon, which is the long, thin part of the cell that transmits the action potential and the different electrical impulses. And the axon endings connect them to other neurons. Myelin sheath is a fatty substance that covers the axon and insulates it and helps speed up the electrical transmissions that are going down it. And that is the body of a neuron.
What do neurons use to talk to each other? A cellular phone.
So today we're going to be talking about the neurotransmitters. This is the axon of one neuron, and this is the dendrite of another neuron. Basically what happens is the axon releases the neurotransmitters into the other neuron. This is the synapse, the gap between the two neurons, and when they connect, action potential and the neurotransmitters do their job. There are many neurotransmitters, such as dopamine, which focuses on learning, and GABA, which is an inhibitor, glutamate, which is the main excitatory neurotransmitter, and norepinephrine, which invokes fight-or-flight response. There's also epinephrine, which is to do with excitatory movements, serotonin, which is movement and happiness, and acetylcholine, which is motor and memory. You guys don't have that because you always forget to watch these videos. And finally, endorphins, which has to do with pleasure and happiness and pain control.
This is what happens when a neurotransmitter is transmitted across the synaptic gap from one neuron's axon terminal to another neuron's dendrites.
Any questions? Of course you guys don't have any questions. You guys never talk.
Hey, Cookie. Hey, bud.